Hi, this is Zach with Worn&Wound. Today I'll be taking a look at the Halios Delfin PVD. For those of you who are unaware of Halios, they are a small brand based out of Canada that has been producing watches for the last several years and has created quite a cult following for themselves. Their watches, all dive watches, have had a certain kind of savvy level of design with a really kind of masterful eye for construction and the details that you often don't find in the price range and or, just in the kind of tool diver kind of category. So recently we reviewed two of their watches, actually two of the same series of watches, both but executed very differently. They were called the Tropics. Those have become extremely popular for Halios. One was in bronze, one was in steel. There's several dial colors, and they were really just kind of these pitch perfect watches at a really reasonable price point, one that really kind of belied the quality that you're getting. The Delfin was a follow-up to that watch, and it's already been out for a little while, though has been largely sold out since first coming into stock. This is the newer release of it in PVD, and these ones are currently available. They're $715 shipped to the US. And what is so cool about this watch, I mean, it's really just a design-focused watch that is still a really kind of rugged diver. So it's 500 meters, water resistant. It's a nice kind of chunky size, but not too big. And it just has these great simple design elements that make it a very stylish watch and yet also very great, like sporty, any day kind of watch as well. So let's take a closer look. Looking at the case of the Halios Delfin PVD, it has a really beautiful design that kind of brings to mind, some vintage pieces, some modern pieces, but it is, I believe, kind of a totally unique design and definitely has a cool aesthetic. So it measures 43.5 millimeters in diameter, 50 or 49 millimeters lug to lug, and about 15 millimeters tall to the top of this beautiful sapphire, dome sapphire crystal here. What is interesting about the case is that everything is kind of angled or rounded. So you don't have slab sides. The sides kind of are all domed and rounded down, and then the bezel comes up with this beautiful slope to it, which then reaches a actually domed ceramic insert, which then reaches this sapphire crystal here. It's really just a beautiful, beautiful geometry that I believe, I would think would be hard to pull off because you have a lot of different components here that have to come together to work and create this kind of seamless transition. Yet it does work perfectly, and it comes across beautifully, both as a visual piece, but then also just in terms of the build quality. Everything is really sturdy on this watch and just, manufactured really well. So the case, it is a cylindrical case in the center, but as it all kind of rounds, sort of in a cushion case fashion. Then you have these tapered lugs coming off. They have little bevels coming down them, which is just a nice, angle to it. Just kind of makes that geometry a little bit more lively. They had 22 millimeter lugs, so it's nice kind of broad shoulders on here. But the lug to lug width, as I said, 49 millimeters is fairly short, so that kind of keeps the size of the watch in check. On the right side, you have a crown, a large screw-down crown with crown guards on either side. That gives it a nice rugged look to it. And if you look at the crown itself, you have the Halios's 3 little moon logo here. It's a nice looking logo. Easy to grip on here with the deep grooves. Looking back at the bezel now, so as I said, it is all domed, but you have this nice toothing to the side. So when you turn it, it's easy to turn. It's a 120 click unidirectional mechanism, really nice and stiff. No play when it's when it's still, and it moves very has a nice snap to it and gets into position well. Flipping the watch over now, you just have a standard solid case back as you'd expect on a 500 meter dive watch. A little bit of information and just a small logo in the center, all lightly etched in. I think it's actually a nice kind of simple execution here. Also PVD'd as you expect. The PVD is actually really cool on this watch. I mean, there's nothing like the PVD itself is just a normal PVD. It's just the way it works visually, I think, is really quite attractive because you have basically so many different types of black in one watch, which is kind of uncommon. So, you have the black of the PVD of the case, you have the black of the ceramic, and then you have multiple blacks or grays on the dial. So it's, it doesn't just look like it's trying to be stealth or really aggressive. I think it works really, really well with the watch in like a logical way. It's a watch that kind of feels right in black. I've seen it in stainless as well, also beautiful, but there's something about this that really is striking to me. Looking now at the dial of the Halios Delfin, you have a really attractive mix of marker styles and textures that come together to create this interesting modern design that clearly draws on vintage watches, but there definitely isn't meant to feel or look like vintage. It just kind of pays respect in some ways to the history of dive watches. And it just is a very beautiful design, one that I think is surprisingly elegant on what is ultimately a very rugged sport watch. So looking here, you can immediately see there are a couple of different textural finishes that create different tones. In the center, you have this inner kind of circular area, which is a matte dark gray, kind of a charcoal gray. And then around that, you have an area that is a brushed dark black. It's circular brushed to give it this kind of, plays with the feeling of a circular dial, obviously. It has a really nice texture, one that is noticeable in the light, and just creates this interesting contrast between the center and the outer ring and all that, And it's something I feel like you don't see on dive watches. They're usually just matte black or something like that. So a nice little bit of play here kind of dresses things up in a fun way. Looking at the primary index, you have applied markers all around. They're triangles for in between the 3, 6, 9, and 12 hours where you have rectangles. I love triangles. It sounds silly, but I actually really like the way triangles work on watch dials, and I love the look here. Once again, it's a little bit vintage, sort of has this like tooth design, but it's not too dramatic. And all these markers are black, but applied on black, which is a cool look because you just kind of ever so slightly pick up light on the edge of the markers. So it's not overly dressy. I think if they'd been polished steel or something like that, they would have felt probably a little bit too gloss, or they would have been glinting a little bit too much in the light. You have the double marker at 12, just easily distinguishes from the rest of the markers, especially in dark where you can't see the logo. It's nice to be able to know where 12 is. At 3, you have a date window. White text on black date. Integrates pretty well. It does truncate the marker at 3, and it does cut between the two areas. I always love to see a no date version just to kind of like see what that would look like, but I think that the integration here doesn't bother me. Now looking at the chapter ring, once again this contrasts with that grained ring. It is another matte dark gray or matte black. This is a really nice area. It just particularly did a nice job here. I feel like some of these chapter rings get a little under-designed, and this one it feels very intentional. So here you have a minute or second index. You have numerals every 10, which is nice rather than having it every 5. I mean, obviously, you can count, so they don't need to always be numbered. The alternating marks at the other 10 interval are then dark red on the black. Tiniest bit of color on the dial, but it makes a really big impact. It looks really cool. And then, just simple things. The typeface is really nice and wide. It just looks good. It makes this watch very easy to read and legible. Looking now at the ceramic bezel insert, you have just a fully counted insert, so it doesn't go like from 0 to 15 in one density and then on. This gives it a little bit of a vintage feeling to me as well. Like the chapter ring below that, you have it alternating every 10 seconds or minutes as you would. Extends the dial out. I think it's just a very attractive look. The lume on the bezel is exceptional as well as on the dial. So all of the markers here, the major markers are loomed. The hands are loomed. The index is loomed. All is BGW9, so it glows like a nice icy blue, which is really nice. Looking now at the hands, you have this really nice hand set, a little atypical for a dive watch. Once again, kind of plays on that mid-century sort of vintage feel. They're matte steel, if you will, matte metal, which is nice. Once again, a little bit of a contrast. I think polished, once again, would have been a little bit too much on here. So it's a good choice. They're sort of a tapering, a triangle. They just come to a point. They have a little bit of a dimensionality to them. So there's a split line down the middle, and you can see, in the light that one side will be lighter than the other. Once again, nice touch. The second hand also in this matte metal, just a straight second hand with a counterweight and then a red triangular pointer. Once again, like the red on the chapter ring, subtle use of color, but one that works very well and is very appropriate. Lastly, actually just looking at the marks, the words on the dial, you have Halios at 12 with the Halios 3 moon logo at 12. Then below you have Delfin and 500 meters. All sized correctly, they don't distract, and I think the use of the various typefaces that are here is actually quite nice. Looking at the Delfin on the wrist, it fits really nicely despite having a slightly larger, medium-large dimension in diameter. So I said it's 43.5 millimeters in diameter, which is maybe larger than a watch that I would, like if I just saw on paper, I would normally go for, preferring in the 40 millimeter range. But on the wrist, it fits really well. In fact, I think it's kind of perfect for the design. 49 millimeter lug to lug is very easy to pull off. I have 7-inch wrist, so that makes it, kind of helps it wear nicely on a potentially smaller wrist. But yeah, just looking at this design, the way everything is staggered, it's really the proportions, right? If you made this smaller, would those all work? And I feel like everything is kind of right. Just the width of this, the width of that, to the size of the dial. It's all, exactly where it's supposed to be. And I feel like that's almost how you end up with like a 43.5 millimeter design. He's working on the design. I'm just making this up, by the way. He's just working on the design, finds like this is where it sits, where everything is right. So I just love the way it looks on the wrist. And like I said, it's this interesting mix of modern and vintage when you see it. So you have, it's clearly a very modern watch. It's not at all, it doesn't look like a watch that, that you dug out of a drawer in any way, shape, or form. Yet it has these elements that are, speak to like the mid-20th century language. And it all just balances out and works to make this great watch. It's stylish, it's elegant, but it's also, a rugged 500-meter dive watch. So, for people who want, a lot of like the kind of tool dive watches I think are a little under-designed in some way. Don't kill me for saying that, but this one just really nails the aesthetic with the build quality, which is what makes it so kind of exceptional. Looking at now at the strap, so it's a 22 millimeter lug. This is a Halios strap. I'm not 100% sure if this is the one that comes with the watch or if this is something else that you can provide, but it's a cool strap. So as you can see, it's a teal, like nylon canvas strap here. It looks great with the black. It's just a really killer color combination. It is heavily padded, it is lined with black leather there, so it is comfortable on the wrist. It's just a cool looking sport strap, something that I imagine you could get wet if you wanted to. Then you have a PVD kind of pre-V style buckle here, but not one of the two broad ones, which would be annoying. So this is nice. Obviously nice to have a PVD with the PVD case. We'll also show it to you on a rugged piece of leather, a leather strap from Halios as well, which just gives it an even more rugged and cool look. Now just showing it to you on leather. This is a very rugged leather strap from Halios as well. It has a lot of like marks in it, raw edges. It's a very cool, really aggressive looking strap, but it works once again really, really well with the watch. I think the other strap, the teal strap, was a little more technical looking and brought out some of the more modern feel of this watch, whereas this brings out more of the vintage, and just kind of aggressive styling of the watch. So whether it's this leather strap or any other leather strap, you can just see that this watch will work really well like that. With this on, I think it'd be really great with just, jeans and boots and stuff like that. So very versatile watch. And actually with the PVD, it's worth noting, PVD sometimes not the most versatile just because it's a little bit more, just more aggressive looking than a steel case. But I find here that this is a watch you kind of comfortably wear anywhere because it balances itself out. To wrap up, the Halios Delfin is just a gorgeous watch. I think that they really nailed the design here, making something interesting and unique, but not too wild or anything like that. It's a familiar watch, just very, very well tuned. The case is beautiful case design. I love the flowing lines of it. I mean, the way the bezel transitions to the the steel part of the bezel to the ceramic to the sapphire and then down to the case sides. I mean, that's something, might have to be seen or felt in person to really get, but it's beautiful, and it's, something you'd expect to find on a much higher end watch. I mean, in terms of price, this is a high end watch. It's just not priced like a luxury watch, at $715, and that is shipped to the US. I think it's a very fair price. It's powered by Miyota 9015. That is, I think some people might think a little high for those movements, but I honestly don't think so at all. It's a great movement, and what you're really paying for here is design, build quality, attention to detail, and it's like an anal attention to detail here. So something you'll really pick up on, and that's a really attractive watch on top of that one that I think you'd find yourself wearing an awful lot. Unfortunately, the stainless steel model has been retired, so PVD is your only option. But like I said, this is a really nice and versatile PVD watch. I wore it a lot, and I really felt like it worked very well with my clothing. I didn't feel like I was wearing something that was stealthy or too aggressive or anything like that. So yeah, please read the full review on Worn and Wound. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.